Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Estonia once again for the first time in what feels like a good little while. Now we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel several times before. We've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a good few different styles, and if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they are very solid all round, but they're probably most famous for their big Imperial Stouts, because those are the ones that have spread all across Europe mostly. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is the first beer I've seen from these guys here in Hong Kong, in fact. It's a style that I have had from them several times before, one that I know they can do very well, and I've heard very good things about this one. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I said, we are going to head to Estonia. We're going to go to the southeast of the country, the city of Tartu, the second city, the home of the oldest university in the country, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Pühaste Pruulikoda. So this particular beer is called Waking Fantasy. It comes in at 12% ABV, it's an Imperial Stout, and they've brewed this one with tonka beans and Ceylon cinnamon, or Sri Lankan cinnamon, if we want to put it into something a bit more recognisable, I guess. But yeah, this should be very nice. This is a beer that I picked up from one of the wine rack stores here in Hong Kong, if memory serves me correctly. They always get a bunch of random things from Pohjola and Puhäste, but of course they are two of the premier names when it comes to the Estonian craft beer scene. If you haven't tried some Estonian beers, I really recommend that you do. The Baltic countries are of course very small in terms of population, so the breweries tend to export a significant chunk of their output, so you get very good beer from the Baltic countries at a very good price in Western Europe, so win-win, I would say. But yeah, definitely cool to return to these guys. I think my last review from them was about 2 and a bit years ago, if I'm not mistaken, so yeah, to find this one was a nice surprise. Let's crack on with it then and see how we go. The Waking Fantasy, a 12% Imperial Stout with cinnamon and tonka beans from Pühaste Pruulikoda in Tartu back in Estonia. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Puhäste before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see any more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. Just go in there, use the little search bar, put your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You can find this one in the Estonian playlist along with a number of other things. That's been added to fairly regularly these days, not as regularly as I would like, but do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Puhäste once again then. So, Pühaste Pruulikoda, or Puhäste Brewery in English, are based in Tartu in southeastern Estonia, and the company was founded back in 2016 by Eero Mander, Lauri Aidaman and Ular Kaljurand. So Lauri comes from a background in IT, whereas Ular is a businessman that specialises in restaurants and bars, whereas Eero has quite an interesting background. He's a former techno DJ and also studied divinity at university, so he's the kind of techno-Christian pastor, if you like, although I think he never worked as a pastor, if I remember correctly. But he was also an avid home brewer for a number of years, starting back in 2011, and he brewed at his summer house in Pusa, which I believe is, it contains a village, that area contains a village called Puhäste, which is of course what the brewery is named after. But he released his first commercial beers in 2014 under the name Blessed Virgin. These proved to be really quite successful, and it was the success of these that prompted him to look at going properly commercial. So the three guys started out as a gypsy brewery, and they brewed in various other breweries around Estonia before deciding in 2015 that they wanted to establish their own facility. So they opened this brewery in September of 2016, and it can be found in Tea Street in the southeastern part of Tartu, and this site used to be an industrial laundry, and I think there was another purpose for it as well. But they've already had to expand their fermentation capacity quite a few times due to the high demand for their beers, and they now brew around 3,500 hectolitres of beer per year. They've got a bar called Kelder in the city centre in Tallinn. I went there and filmed an out and about video. You can, or in Tartu, sorry. You can go and check my out and about video that I did of that one. And they have another bar which is simply called Taproom in Tallinn, and the current location of this is in the Rotermani area, and this opened in September of 2024. Prior to that, they had one a little bit further out. From what I remember, it was in a big white house. I forget the name of that area, but I think that closed down for a period of time, and recently, yeah, they've reopened in a new location in Tallinn as well. But like I said to you, these guys do a whole bunch of different styles. Probably their most famous series is the Silver series, their barrel aged series. They've got a whole whack of barrels in that brewery that they experiment a lot with, and there are some very good beers in that program. These guys have got a very impressive barrel program. These guys and Sori are probably the two best in Estonia when it comes to that. But yeah, as of September 2025, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 360 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. But yeah, that is everything I can tell you about Pühaste Pruulikoda for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, or you can check out the Untappd page to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. I do have on the channel as well a Meet the Brewer video that I filmed with Aeromander a couple of years ago, and there is also an out and about video that I filmed at Pühaste Kelder in Tallinn, Tartu as well. I keep doing that, Pühaste Kelder in Tartu, which you can go and check out. It's a really nice little bar, and if you find yourself in the city, I would recommend that you go and check that out, and you'll have some very nice beers. But yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at this beer itself. So yeah, I have to say the artwork on this one is quite nice. It kind of reminds me of Annette Olsen, who was one of the singers for Nightwish. It kind of reminds me of what was the video again? Was it Bye Bye Beautiful? It kind of reminds me of how she was dressed up in that video that Nightwish did a good few years ago. That's quite a long time ago now, I'm getting old. But yeah, plain silver top on the can there. You can see that this one is 330 millilitres. There you can see Puhäste on the side, and yeah, it just tells you a little bit about the beer on the back. So all it says is Imperial Stout brewed with tonka beans and Ceylon cinnamon, and there you can see the little profile bit there. Waking Fantasy Imperial Stout, 12% ABV. But yeah, it looks really quite nice, this one, nicely presented. It's been a wee while since I've had a tonka bean Imperial Stout actually, and I don't think I've ever tried Ceylon cinnamon. I've had a lot of Swedish cinnamon of course over the years, but never any Ceylon or Sri Lankan cinnamon. So yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what it's all about. My first Puhäste beer in about 2 years actually. So let's have a little look at this one and see what it's got. I have to say that's pouring very, very nicely. Look at that. There we go. So let me just line that up so that my OCD is happy. There we are. So it's in a nice position now. But yeah, anyway, as you can see, before the head disappears, of course as well, we can say that the beer poured with about a 1/3 finger of a frothy, kind of medium to dark tan head. Just let you have a little look at that, camera. If it focuses, there we go. You can see some medium-sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid. It does get a little bit more kind of soapy the further up that you go, but yeah, that head has just faded away to be a very thin, foamy layer. There's just a few wisps on the top of the beer actually, and you've got that nice ring around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, this beer is pretty much black as night. Even if you shine the light through it, there's only a little hint of that kind of Coca-Cola coloured edge to it. So yeah, remember the colour of your beer depends on a few different things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. And that can vary from, that can vary a little bit with stouts, but not too much, to be honest with you. I've only ever seen it done once, and it was actually these guys with a stout they did with beets in it, and the beer had that little bit of had a little bit of kind of colour from the adjuncts in it. But barrel aging and stuff in these beers won't really do very much either. But when it comes to playing with the Imperial Stout as a style, there's a few different ways you can do it. You can do a double mash, for example, which is going to give you a really big, thick, sticky mouthfeel. You can barrel age them, where you're going to sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel to get some more kind of infused flavours. You can do a longer wort boil, which is going to give you some really leathery, kind of caramelly, complex flavours to it. Or you can add the adjuncts in, as I said, which is going to give you some interesting stuff as well. Flavour essences and stuff is another way to play with these ones. So those are the 4 ways that you can play with your Imperial Stout. But colour-wise, it's very difficult to affect these with adjuncts and things like that, as I've mentioned. But not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. This one is pretty much black as night. As we said, lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. I don't think we really need to say anything more about the appearance of this beer, in all honesty. So I think we can go on and have a little look at the aroma of this one. But I will say, if you sugar it up, look at the lacing that gives. You can see how boozy this one actually is. Quite a few of the Puhäste Imperial Stouts I've had have been sort of 10-11%. This one's slightly stronger than that, I think. But let's go on and just have a little look at the aroma of this one, because I'm very, very curious about this. Oh, going to say straight away, this one is absolutely lovely. Like I've said, over the years I've had quite a few very positive experiences with Pühaste Imperial Stouts, and this one is no exception. You can smell the cinnamon in this one, of course, straight away. And I will admit, I'm not the biggest fan of cinnamon in Imperial Stouts. I kind of got this one because it was Puhäste and tonka beans, and I was curious how the cinnamon would work with that. So this was a kind of curiosity beer for me, rather than being one that I was like, oh, that's going to be really, really good. So we'll say that straight away. But I have a feeling this one is going to be pretty damn good. And Puhäste are, of course, in my experience, very good at balancing out the aromas and stuff like that. So aroma-wise, this is lovely. Where do we start with this one? It's it's a big, boozy beast of a beer, which is exactly what you'd expect if you know what this brewery's like with Imperial Stouts. So it gives you everything you want. You've got a nice chocolatey character, kind of cakiness in there, a bit of fruitiness, and the adjuncts are really nicely balanced, in fact. So for me, the backbone of this beer, you've got a little bit of a roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust in there. There's some woodiness, of course. There's a sort of like chocolate sponge cake type note to it. Chocolate brownie as well, some nutty elements. And within the kind of sort of cakey and brownie layers, that's where you're getting a lot of the cinnamon for me. And I think the tonka beans are giving you this kind of sort of vanilla type quality. I've always found that tonka beans are kind of somewhere between vanilla and cinnamon. Their aroma really just kind of reminds me of that. They're very popular for cooking, I think, in Latin America, if I'm not mistaken. But I think, if I remember right, that they're banned in America for some reason. They're banned in the US, so you never really get tonka bean stouts from the US for that reason. I remember reading that when I was researching what they were, like one of the first times I encountered them. But that sort of cakey brownie-like layer that's in this one, you can smell the tonka beans, the kind of vanilla fibrousy quality in that, and of course the cinnamon's in there as well. The cinnamon in this one feels a little bit more rich, a little bit almost more caramelly than I'm used to with the Swedish cinnamon, right enough. But then on top of that, there's a good little bit of like oily rye bready character coming out of this beer. Maybe a little bit wholemeal brown bread as well. But yeah, in all, when you put all of that together, it kind of reminds me of like a Scottish, or maybe, you know, English. I think it's very similar. The Scottish English Christmas pudding. My dad always used to love those for his birthday in February, and my mum used to just make extra at Christmas time and leave a few for him. But yeah, it really, the aroma of this one really reminds me of the kind of Scottish Christmas pudding / my dad's birthday cake. But yeah, from the aroma of this one too, I don't think this beer has had too long of a wort boil, but you can smell that there's quite a bit of complexity to the brown sugar. I think there's been a slightly longer wort boil, but not madly long, I would say. So for me, there's a fair bit of chocolate and brown sugar in this one. The chocolatey side of the beer for me is quite rich, maybe about 80% cocoa chocolate, quite rich and dark and fruity. Then on top of that, you've got the brown sugars. There's a bit of toastiness in there. It's a bit of a more leathery brown sugar as well. Sweet caramel, treacle molasses. And yeah, you can smell that the cinnamons, there's a little bit of that more kind of crispy cinnamon, if that makes sense. The cinnamon bun type note definitely coming out of this one too. Kanelbulla, as we would have said in Swedish. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in the malty backbone of this one. I really, really like how this beer goes together. I would say I'm getting a bit more nuttiness out of it the more that I smell of it too, but the brown sugary characters really come to the fore in this one as well. It's a lovely, lovely beer. But yeah, the aroma that comes out of this is absolutely lovely. That's just the malty side of it that we've looked at as well. So yeah, if we go to the back of the nose and get the yeasty character, the yeasty side of the beer for me is a little bit more kind of rye bready, but it's got quite a little bit of sweet fruity character to it as well. So maybe it's somewhere, the yeasty character is somewhere between like oily rye bread and sweet like brandy soaked raisin bread or something like that. That really is where the yeasty character in this one lingers for me. I could sit and smell this one all day. As I say, kind of strange for me because I'm not the greatest fan of cinnamon in beers, but the aroma of this is just really, really pretty damn nice. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything else we need to say about the yeasty side of it. I think mostly, yeah, like rye bread, wholemeal brown bread, kind of like a, yeah, like brandy soaked raisin bread or something like that. So yeah, the way all of that kind of pieces together in this one, I think, is really, really nice. Yeah, so I think that's it for the malty yeasty side of the beer. Let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. So, as I've said in many Imperial Stout reviews before, the Imperial Stout is not the most hop forward of styles, but the hops can add a wee bit of complexity to them, and depending on how old the beer is, I actually don't know how old this can is, but it's not going to make too much of a difference. The numbers are a bit, it says it's best drink before the 29th of April 27, so yeah, actually I don't know how long they tend to put on their beers at Puhäste. Maybe this one, I think I got this before April of this year. I'm pretty sure I've had this one for a little while, so yeah, maybe they put 3 years on them, I couldn't tell you. But yeah, when you have an Imperial Stout, the hops are going to drop out over time, and of course the mouthfeel is going to give you this more kind of silky character over time too. So not 100% sure how old this one actually is, but you can still smell a little bit of the hoppy green component to this one. It's quite common to use a little bit of like Williamette or Bramling's Cross or something like that in these beers. But yeah, for me there is a little bit of green component there. There's a wee touch of like earthiness, a wee bit of like woody character as well, some floral aromaticity, and there's also that wee bit of kind of grassiness as well. So yeah, the way that goes together in this one, I think, is really quite nice. Yeah, I like that with this one. So yeah, nice floral aromaticity, a wee bit of grassiness as well, and I don't think there's too much else to say about that in all honesty. So let's round off our look at the aroma with a wee bit of the fruitiness. So yeah, fruity side of this beer for me, I would say it's pretty much kind of as you'd expect from the style. There's lots of like there's maybe a little touch of reason to it. Lots of big, like, oily plums and prunes. A little bit of date and a little bit of datey character underneath for sure. There's a datey character to it. There's figs, black currants, blackberries, these sorts of things. Lovely, lovely aroma, as I say. I could sit and smell that all day, but the whole point of these videos is to taste the beer, so let's get on with that. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in. This one is pretty damn awesome, I have to say, so do enjoy that for a little while. But yeah, let's have a taste of this then. So this one is the Waking Fantasy, a 12% Imperial Stout from the wonderful Pühaste Pruulikoda in Tartu in the southeastern part of Estonia. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers, terve 6. Ooh, that's very nice. I'm going to say straight away, this beer, it's got a really nice balance to it. So quite often these days when you'd see a stout with, you know, Ceylon cinnamon and tonka beans in it, you'd expect something to be like a, you know, to be one of these big pastry stouts. And when it comes to the pastry stout style category, I have to admit I am not the greatest fan of those. I don't like that kind of granola, marzipan-y type flavour that you get out of them. I much prefer things like this. I like my old, you know, my Imperial milk stouts, and you know, the barrel aged, the kind of barrel aged things, and then yeah, the old school RISs. This one is definitely more of an old school kind of RIS type Imperial stout, and that's what I like about the likes of Puhäste and Pojala. I think it must just be the kind of and the Finnish breweries do this as well, so I think it must be a kind of Baltic, Nordic kind of thing. There's not too much in the way of these big sweet pastry stouts. You know, Sweden does have a few, but anyway. But yeah, I think we can say that Finland and the Baltics and Finland and Estonia for sure, they definitely have quite a, they like a smoky character, they like a roasty character in their big dark beers. So yeah, this one is a proper old school kind of RIS type beer, and the adjuncts just kind of add to the whole depth of the thing. So I'm going to say straight away, thumbs up to Puhäste. If you've tried the Puhäste Imperial Stouts, you will enjoy this one if you like those. So yeah, a wee bit different to what I've had from them before, but I think this is really good. This is a wee bit of a nostalgia trip for me, this beer, in honesty. So yeah, these big toasty RISs, I really miss these kind of beers. But yeah, let's just break this beer down then and describe it for you more in depth, as we always do. Middle third of your palate. The backbone of the beer is that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust in there. I want to say it's maybe a little bit of Special B or something like that that's been used in here. I don't think it's Carafa, I think it's more likely to be something like Special B. Otherwise it will be an Estonian grown malt or whatever, but I don't know how much malt they actually produce themselves, in fairness. But yeah, mostly forest, that country. But yeah, as you go further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of woodiness further forward there. There is a wee bit of a kind of crackery character sitting on top of that, and then the next layer up is a kind of, it's kind of like more of a dry rye bread, in fact. So yeah, quite a dry rye bready character sitting on top of that. Then the next layer up is a little bit of a more kind of wholemeal brown bready character. I'd say that bready layer is a little bit more moist, and then within those bready layers I think there's a little touch of nuttiness and woodiness as well. But then the next layer above that is the kind of like chocolate sponge cake, and within the chocolate sponge cake, I think that's when you start to get the cinnamon and the tonka beans coming out, particularly into the aftertaste. You've seen how long it was since I took a sip of this beer, but yeah, the other things coming out of that are really, like, very, very nice. So yeah, definitely rye bread, I said the rye bread was dry before, but maybe not quite. So the rye bready layer, there's a wee bit of dryness to it. You've got the wholemeal brown bread above that, the chocolate sponge, the kind of chocolate brownie, and within those layers, as I say, you've got the cinnamon coming out, and the tonka bean as well, that sort of vanilla character with the tonka bean. Then above the kind of big gooey chocolate brownie, you actually get the chocolatey side of this beer. So as I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So within that kind of chocolatey layer that you've got, it's a more 40% cocoa chocolate. It's a more 40% cocoa chocolatey character that's coming out of this one. Like a slightly milky chocolate, but as you move further back, I think it goes toward a more 80-90% cocoa chocolate over the period, or over the area of that, middle third of your palate. So that's great. Really like that. But on top of that, you start to get the kind of brown sugary layers out of the beer. So let's have a wee look at that. So yeah, the brown sugary layers in this beer. I think the base layer is a little bit more kind of toasty. Then the next layer up, I think, is a slightly more leathery brown sugar. But like I say, I don't think this beer has had too long of a wort boil. Wouldn't surprise me if it's, it wouldn't surprise me if it was double mash, but it's a very, very smooth double mash if it is. But yeah, I think the leathery brown sugar layer isn't too dry either, and if it was a particularly long wort boil, it would be quite drier and smoother. There'd be a bit more complexity to it. So yeah, you've got a roasty, toasty brown sugar layer, you've got a more kind of leathery brown sugar layer on top of that, and then in the centre of your palate, you've got that big oily circle coming out of this one. So yeah, above the leathery layer, you've got that kind of sweet, kind of highly caramelized brown sugar in there, and then yeah, in the dead center of your palate, you've got the kind of treacle molasses type note coming out of this one, and that is of course the boozy part of the beer. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together in the middle third of your palate is quite nice, and I think that is the most complex part of the beer. You can also feel some sort of nutty flavors just emanating from it into the aftertaste as well. But yeah, I think that covers the middle third of your palate. Let's go to the back third of your palate then. As I've often said, you'll get similar flavours on the back third of your palate compared to the middle third of your palate, but just at different intensities. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice kind of bready build up in there. You get a little bit of, you get a little bit of a more kind of, rye bready character in the base, the wholemeal brown bread, then the more kind of chocolate sponge, and you'll feel a wee bit of the kind of more gooey chocolate brownie on top with a wee bit of the roasty chocolate in there. But yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, you've got the roasty toasty, well-fired bread crust. These layers are of course a little bit drier, but yeah, you've got the roasty toasty bread crust, the cracker, the rye bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter, taller and more airy. You can say the same about the wholemeal brown bready layer above that. Then you've got the chocolate sponge cakey layer above that, which you can say the same for. And then yeah, the chocolate brownie layer, which again feels gooey. It feels a little bit drier. There's maybe a wee touch of a cocoa nibby powdery character to it. But then yeah, you're getting sort of 80-90% cocoa chocolate coming out of that one. And above everything else, you've got the yeasty side of the beer. So yeah, let's have a wee look at that. So yeah, yeasty side of this beer then. So for me, the yeasty side of this beer, at its core, it's that sort of Scottish English, big fruity Christmas puddingy sort of thing at the core. Then around the edge of that, it's got a little bit more of a kind of rye bready sort of note. So yeah, chocolate Scottish Christmas pudding at the core, the kind of rye bready layer around the edge, and then yeah, it's got a wee bit of a more kind of toasty, bread crusty character further out from that. So yeah, that's quite an interesting point with this beer. I wouldn't call it like black well-fired bread crust, but yeah, more of a kind of sweet kind of rye bready bread crust. The yeasty character in this beer, it feels a bit sweeter and a wee bit drier, but yeah, you can feel the roasty toasty character from the bottom layer on that back third of your palate pushing out into the aftertaste too. And definitely, yeah, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of compresses down and it squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, goes together really, really nicely. Now, when it comes to the hoppy side of the beer then, let's do the green component. Back corners of the palate, there is a good little touch of earthiness in there. Although you can feel the hops on this one have dropped out a wee bit because the side of your palate is fairly smooth. So this beer must be a year and a bit old or something like that for that to start happening. You can feel some of the silky kind of mouthfeel coming out of this too. But yeah, you've got that little bit of earthiness in the back corners of the palate there. As you move further forward, it's got a wee bit of a woody, herbally character to it. Then yeah, as you push further forward from that, those two elements kind of spread forward a wee bit. You get a little bit of floral aromaticity on the front corners of your palate, then round the front curve of your tongue, it's definitely a little touch lighter and more grassy. So let's focus now on that front third of your palate and the fruity side of things, just to round off the tasting section of this video. So yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get that little bit of bready build up in there. There's the kind of rye bready character in the base, the wholemeal brown bread on top of that, the chocolate sponge, and then the kind of chocolate brownie. Then the base of that front third of your palate, there's the roasty toasty well-fired bread crust, of course, the cracker, the rye bread, the wholemeal brown bread, the chocolate sponge, the kind of gooey chocolate brownie there, and I want to say there's a wee bit of the toasty brown sugar and the leathery brown sugar sitting there. So I think the leathery brown sugar there is a little bit sweeter on that front third of your palate, and you can feel a little bit of more of the tonka bean sweetness and a wee bit of the cinnamon sweetness coming out of this one as well. Like I say, I find this Ceylon Sri Lankan cinnamon to be a little bit more brown sugary and sweet, if you like, than the Swedish cinnamon that I'm used to. But yeah, above that, of course, you get that nice oily bubble where the fruity, juicy esters roll the way out of the beer. So let's look at that just to round off this tasting. Yeah, fruity side of this beer is really damn nice. It's kind of similar to how I described it in the aroma, except there's a wee bit more, the datey side of this one, I think probably because of the influence of the cinnamon, is coming out a wee bit more. So yeah, yeah, when you take the beer in, it's actually pretty phenolic, if you like. So yeah, further back, at the back half of that front third of your tongue, there's a wee bit of raisin on the top, but then yeah, it's big juicy plums and slightly drier prunes underneath. The back half of that front third of your palate's all about the kind of daty sort of flavours. So maybe a little bit like oily pear and things like that, and some sultana type flavours mixed in with that. But yeah, the back half of the front third of your palate, the fruity side, is all about the dates. As you move further forward to the middle of that front third of your palate, it's a little bit more about, yeah, it's absolutely a little bit more about the kind of juicy figgy kind of qualities. And then yeah, the front half, it's like black currant underneath and blackberries on top, I would say. Yeah, I would sit with that. Black currant underneath, but quite juicy. Blackberries on top. And yeah, a little bit of the roasty character pushes its way out the further into the aftertaste that you go with this one too. And I think the cinnamon starts to give you a wee bit of dryness into the aftertaste as well. So yeah, this is a really interesting Imperial Stout, quite different to what we've had from Puhäste before. But in some ways it's showing a lot of the characteristics that I would expect of one of their Imperial Stouts. So yeah, nice return and change of pace from this brewery in a sense. I think that's a good way we can summarise what we've got going on here. But yeah, let's round off the review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. For me, this beer, yeah, it's kind of mid-range, full-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. And this one, it's got a lovely kind of silky, slightly oily leaning mouthfeel. In terms of IBU with this beer, what would we say? And to be fair, one of the things to watch with this is that you could easily conflate the kind of like the bit of spicy character that the beer has from the cinnamon with the bitterness. Yeah, I would say IBU wise, I want to say this one's maybe about maybe 60, 50 or 60 IBUs. It does have a wee bit of bitterness from the hop and some of the roastiness in there, and also that little bit of spiciness. So there's all of that going on in this one, which is nice. But then yeah, it's maybe 60 IBUs in this one. The malt base a bit roastier underneath, smoother in the middle, and then a kind of dry sweetness on top. And yeah, you've got a lovely sort of fruity character, a lovely oily fruity character in this one from the hop, and also a kind of phenolic element out of this one. And the adjuncts don't overpower this beer either. They blend in quite well with the malty side of things. But the sort of fibrous-y vanilla and slightly spicier and sweeter cinnamon characters that come out of this beer, they really embed in the malt base, I think is fair to say, but they show their way, they kind of push their way out a little bit more into the aftertaste. I think that's a fair assessment of what's going on here. But yeah, this has been really nice, a lovely return to Pühaste Pruulikoda for the first time in what, 2.5 years I said. So yeah, this one was the Waking Fantasy, a 12% Imperial Stout from Pühaste Pruulikoda in Tartu in the southeast of Estonia, back in Europe. So yeah, if you get the chance to try some Estonian beers, I highly recommend that you do. But once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers from Puhäste are. Let me know any other Estonian breweries that I should check out should I get the chance. And yeah, try some nice Estonian beers. I highly recommend that. But until the next time, check out my social media, check out Pühaste Pruulikoda's social media, and I will see you guys in another review very, very soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and tervetuloa.